This is Paul. Yeah. Um, it's 5:32, and I'm only going to spend an hour this evening. Mhm. There are a couple things that are of concern to me, mm, and I think it's really important that I put my thoughts in well in a recording or video or some some way of remembering what is important. Now, the pauper, yeah, a person so poor that he's entitled to receive public charity. A person who, because of poverty, is permitted to prosecute or defend a suit without being charged with costs. Yes. Mhm. That means prosecute a suit or defend. Mm. Now, I put some videos on the YouTube. Yeah. And I just want to remind law enforcement that your abuse of citizens, yeah, especially those that are poor, is actually worse than if I were rich. Yeah. Now, well, it really is. See, a lot of police officers, they seem to think that since the individual doesn't have the availability of paying for their own attorney, yeah, can't really file a lawsuit. Right now, right now, yeah. That abusing the poor is some way better for them than abusing the wealthy. Yes. Now, my right to the full enjoyment of my property. My property rights are protected by both federal and state constitutional and statutory provisions and by the precedents of common law. Most meaningful of these protections is the constitutional language. Yes. Prohibiting the taking of property without due process of law. Mhm. Now, let's say you are using the due process of law, life, liberty, and property, yes, to protect yourself from a lawsuit, yes, because you issued a court order where the petitioner didn't sign it, yes, the respondent didn't do a mental health evaluation, and your thought was, well, if they don't do a mental health evaluation, yeah, I can't issue an order as a judge, yes, obligating them to have to participate in the domestic violence perpetrators program. Yep. I can't issue an order requiring them to be evaluated or participate in civil commitment. I cannot issue an order, yes, without due process of law. Now, for me, there's a really big problem with the use of the judicial authority, yes, to violate due process of law. I've said it probably 10,000 times. Yes, I did not get any due process of law when issuing a protection order. I gave you, well, probably 100 different examples of the actual requirements of law. Yes, to be able to issue a court order. Now, the judge, yes, thinks that, well, this service of the order, yeah, unless the respondent, the pauper, or the pauper's lawyer was present at the hearing. Yeah. The order must be served on the respondent. The respondent must know what restraint provisions are in place when the order expires. Yes. Mhm. And you did that. You served me in the Squim Public Library, and the individual that served me wasn't a police officer. No. Now, this due process of law, when you're a judge, yes, and you violate what is obligated. Yes. An example would be uh, respondent, yes, must not obtain or possess firearms. Yes. Findings, the courts check all that apply. The first restraint provision is ordered above, and the court found on page 1. Yep. Respondent had actual notice, represented a credible threat, and was an intimate partner. Now, these three conditions for the availability of issuing a court order, especially what's it called, a protection order, when being found guilty of issuing court orders where those three conditions actually were not any of the conditions of issuing the order. It effectively was to, kidnap my sons, but to protect yourself from liability. Now, since we know I didn't get actual notice of the court hearing, and we know that I wasn't a credible threat because the petitioner didn't sign that, you can't say that we were intimate partners. Poop. Now, anytime a judge decides that they are going to abuse their judicial authority, and violate the due process obligations of issuing any court order, where there's life, liberty, and property involved in it, the Fifth and 14th Amendment, I feel confident that I'm going to get $100 billion. For you using court orders that require due process, to obstruct yourselves from getting lawsuits. Now, a little variation right now of the Fifth and 14th Amendment violations of what is required to be able to issue protection orders, dissolutions of marriage, and really any of the actual known court orders. In fact, I would say that all of the known judicial processes, the pauper, life, liberty, and property, all of them have the requirements of law to be able to issue them. Now, here's this. This is something I'd been seeing for the previous 4.5 years before you issued this. No contact until there's a mental health evaluation of the respondent and treatment if recommended. Court will review upon motion of respondent. Now, you have to keep me as a respondent right now so that you would not get sued for issuing court orders where there was no due process in 2011. Brent Baisden, Judge Ken Williams, so that you wouldn't get sued. When I was found not guilty, and the verdict of the jury was not guilty. Because you issued it based upon the false premise that I was guilty of violating it on May 4th of 2012. You wouldn't get sued for modifying it right now because I was never given any due process before the modification. The Sequim Gazette, the advertisement of the actual respondent petitioner. And then you wouldn't get sued, for renewing it for 2 years, where it was mail and publication, and the sheriff's department called me, and I went to the sheriff's department, and they served me some documents that were not relevant to the actual court hearing on August 30th of 2013. Now, you wouldn't get sued, for issuing court orders that have forgeries on them. You wouldn't get sued, for issuing court orders that have the forgery of the court commissioner on them. You wouldn't get sued, for not having the petitioner's name on it right now. See, when you think about one issuing a court order to insulate yourself, from liability as a judge and a county, now there's the liability of using what is known as the abuse of judicial process, known as the Fifth and 14th Amendment, that it is a requirement of law that you do not